It was a dreary autumn evening, and the last train from the city rumbled its way through the darkening countryside. Emily sat in her usual spot by the window, wrapped in her worn-out scarf, gazing out at the blurred shapes of trees racing by. She always rode this train home after a long day at her job, a habit that had become as routine as the fading daylight. The carriage was nearly empty, save for a few scattered passengers. It was the kind of quiet that hung in the air like fog, making every tiny sound stand out. A rustle of a newspaper, the soft crinkle of a snack wrapper. Just as the train approached an isolated stretch of track, the flickering fluorescent lights buzzed above her, casting an eerie glow that made the shadows dance in unsettling ways. Then the train slowed and came to an unsteady stop. Emily frowned, glancing at the digital display that read, "Technical delay." The conductor's voice crackled over the intercom, assuring passengers they would be moving shortly, but a heavy sense of unease settled in the carriage. They were stuck on an unlit stretch of track, with thick woods looming on either side. After a few moments, Emily noticed a figure standing at the far end of the carriage. He was tall and dressed in a long, dark coat that nearly brushed the floor. His face was obscured by the low light, but she could make out a hint of very pale skin and dark hair. The way he stood so still, like a mannequin, sent a shiver down her spine. As time passed, the lights flickered again, plunging the carriage into darkness for a brief moment. When they flickered back to life, the stranger had moved closer, now sitting directly across from her. He seemed to study her intently, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Hey," he said, his voice low and raspy. "Don't you think it's strange that we're stuck here?" Emily forced a smile, hoping to appear nonchalant despite her growing discomfort. "Yeah, it's a little unusual. Must be a technical issue." She tried to sound casual, but felt her heart quicken. The stranger leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "You know, this part of the train line has a dark history. They say it's haunted." "What?" she replied, trying to keep her tone light. "You're kidding, right?" He shook his head. "No, really. Years ago, a train derailed nearby. They say everyone on board vanished without a trace. Just disappeared." Emily swallowed hard and glanced around, half expecting the other passengers to laugh or chime in, but they were all engrossed in their own worlds, oblivious to her rising anxiety. The stranger leaned back, watching her closely. "You should be careful. You never know who might be lurking in the shadows." She laughed nervously, but the sound felt hollow. "You're starting to freak me out." "Good," he said, a hint of amusement creeping into his voice. "Fear is a powerful emotion." With a sudden jolt, the train lurched forward, then stopped again. The lights flickered, and this time, they went out completely. The carriage was plunged into darkness, leaving Emily's skin prickling with dread. She could barely hear the others mumbling among themselves, their voices muffled and distorted. In the suffocating silence, she felt a movement beside her. The stranger had moved closer, but in the dark, she couldn't see him. "You really should pay attention to your surroundings," he whispered, his breath cool against her cheek. Emily leaned away, panic rising in her throat. "Stop! Don't come any closer." The lights flared back to life, and to her horror, she realized he was no longer in his seat. Her heart raced as she scanned the carriage, searching for him among the other passengers. But he was gone. "Passengers, please remain calm," the conductor's voice crackled through the intercom. "We're experiencing some difficulties, but we'll be on our way shortly." The train jolted again, this time audible mechanical groans echoing like a warning. Emily's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of her seat. Just then, she noticed her reflection in the window, pale, wide-eyed, and terrified. Suddenly, a chilling laugh echoed down the carriage, sending icy tendrils of fear wrapping around her heart. It was the stranger's voice. "You shouldn't have ignored my warning, Emily." Her blood ran cold. How did he know her name? Panic surged through her as she leaped to her feet, frantically searching for an exit. The train still wasn't moving, and the other passengers looked on in confusion. "Hey, what's wrong?" one of them shouted, but her gaze was fixed on the space where the stranger had been. Just then, the lights flickered again. This time, the overhead lights didn't come back on. The train was consumed by darkness once more, but this time she could hear footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate. Someone was right outside her vision. "Emily," the voice beckoned softly, and a chill grazed her neck. With a scream, she bolted down the aisle, her heart pounding like a drum. She pushed past confused passengers, desperate to reach the door, but as she got closer, she felt a cold hand grasp her wrist with surprising strength. She turned to see the stranger's pale face looming impossibly close, eyes hollow and dark. "You can't escape fear that easily," he whispered. In one frantic motion, Emily twisted free and flung herself toward the emergency exit, pulling the lever with trembling hands. The door swung open, and she stumbled into the night. But instead of the ground below, she fell into an endless abyss. Blackness swallowed her whole, filled with echoes of laughter and whispers of old stories, of vanished souls. Days later, the train resumed its journey, carrying bewildered passengers unsuspecting of the horror that lurked in the shadows. They would return home, but to Emily, the train was forever lost, just another empty vessel, bound by the stories of the ones it had taken and never brought back. And somewhere in the depths of those woods, the wind carried the echoes of her screams, and the stranger watched, waiting for the next unwary soul to join him. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled at the edge of a vast, dense forest, there lived a curious little girl named Eliza. With her long dark hair that danced in the wind and bright, inquisitive eyes, she was known for her adventurous spirit. Every day after school, she would explore the meadows, climb trees, and collect wildflowers, but the forest had always been a place she was warned to avoid. "Stay away from the whispering woods," the villagers would say. "It is cursed, and many who enter never return." Eliza had heard the stories of lost children and eerie voices that echoed among the trees. But as time passed, her curiosity grew stronger than her fear. One crisp autumn afternoon, on her way back from a picnic with her friends, she took a detour towards the edge of the forest. The golden leaves rustled enticingly, and the sunlight filtered through the branches like golden tendrils urging her onward. As her feet crossed the invisible line that separated safety from peril, she felt a thrill coursing through her. Once inside, the atmosphere changed. The vibrant colors of the outside world quickly faded, replaced by an eerie dimness. The trees loomed tall and ancient, their gnarled roots and branches forming twisted shapes. With every step deeper into the woods, an unsettling silence enveloped her, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. Eliza wandered further, captivated by the beauty of the golden and crimson foliage. She picked up acorns and admired the shapes of mushrooms that dotted the ground. Time lost its meaning as she ventured deeper, the sunlight waning until only faint rays broke through the thick canopy. Suddenly, she realized how far she had strayed from the trail. Panic began to swirl in her chest like a storm. "I should turn back," she muttered to herself, but the path she had taken seemed to twist and turn like a serpentine beast, leading her further into the heart of the forest. As Eliza retraced her steps, something strange began to happen. She heard whispers, soft, low murmurs carried on the wind like a melody that beckoned her closer. "Eliza, Eliza." The voice was sweet yet haunting, wrapping around her like tendrils of mist. "Hello," she called out, her voice echoing eerily through the trees. Silence fell, thick and oppressive. Then, as if in answer, the whispers returned, more insistent, urging her to come closer. Against her better judgment, she followed the sound, thinking perhaps it was another lost child who needed help. The further she walked, the deeper the whispers intensified, weaving through the branches like a spell. "Eliza? Come play with us. Forever. A chill crept down her spine as she stumbled into a small clearing. In the center, she saw a group of shadowy figures, their faces obscured, swaying gently as if caught in a trance. "Who are you?" she stammered, backing away, fear pooling in her stomach. The figures turned towards her, their eyes glowing faintly in the shadows, and the whispers grew louder, echoing in her mind. "Join us, Eliza. Leave the world behind." A cold breeze swept through the clearing, carrying the scent of damp earth and decay. Eliza felt her heart race as realization dawned on her. These were not just shadows, they were lost souls, children like her, trapped in the forest's sinister embrace. Her instincts kicked in, and she turned to run, but the forest twisted around her. The trees seemed to shift and rearrange, closing off her escape. The whispers transformed into a cacophony of pleas and laughter, their voices melding into a chilling chorus. "Stay with us. Never leave." Desperation fueled her speed as she darted through the thickets, branches clawing at her clothes and skin. The forest was alive, watching, waiting. With every step, shadows chased her, whispering her name, drawing her deeper into the darkness. As night fell, the forest glowed with an otherworldly light, the shadows merging to form a path. Eliza stumbled upon a silver stream, its surface reflecting the moonlight like shards of glass. With a flicker of hope, she dashed towards it, believing it to be a sign of freedom. But as she reached the water's edge, a haunting figure emerged from the depths, a ghostly girl, her hair flowing like ethereal ribbons. "You cannot escape, Eliza. This forest feeds on your fear. You are one of us now." Terror filled Eliza as she gazed into the girl's empty eyes, feeling the pull of the shadows. She remembered her home, her family, the warmth of the village, and knew she had to resist. Summoning every ounce of courage, she shouted, "No, I will not stay." With those words, a blinding light surged from within her. The whispers shrieked in agony, and the shadows recoiled, their hold weakening. The ghostly figure faded back into the depths, shrieking in anger and despair as Eliza stumbled backward. She threw herself into the water, feeling its cool embrace, pulling her into depths far away from the forest. As she surfaced, gasping for breath, Eliza found herself back on the edge of the dangerous woods, the dawn breaking above her. With the first light of morning, the whispers vanished, replaced by the cheerful chirping of birds and the gentle rustle of leaves. Eliza ran home, overwhelmed by relief and disbelief. She vowed never to return to the whispering woods, keeping the secret of her terrifying night to herself. But sometimes, late at night, she could still hear faint whispers when the wind blew through her window, reminding her of the woods that almost claimed her, and of the shadows that still lingered, waiting for another lost child to wander too far from home.